Lieutenant Daon stared at her sensor display and blinked twice. The numbers made no sense. She tapped the screen with her finger, hoping it was just a glitch in the system. The readings remained the same. Something massive had just entered the Vryn Empire's border zone, and it was unlike anything she had ever seen before. "Commander Hansol, I have an unusual contact," Daon said, keeping her voice steady. She had worked at Talon's Eye monitoring station for 6 years, and in all that time nothing strange had ever happened. The station orbited the gas giant Helior Prime, watching the empty space at the edge of Vryn territory. Most days were boring. Most days nothing happened at all. Commander Hansol walked over to her station. He was a tall man with tired eyes and gray hair at his temples. Running a border monitoring station was not a glamorous job, and Hansol knew it. He looked at Daon's screen and frowned. "Sensor malfunction," he said simply. "Run a diagnostic." Daon nodded and began the diagnostic sequence. She had expected Hansol to say that. The reading showed a single object with a gravitational signature equal to an entire battle fleet. That was impossible. Nothing could be that massive and still function as one ship. The diagnostic completed after 2 minutes. All systems were working perfectly. "No malfunction, sir," Daon reported. "The readings are accurate." Hansol's frown deepened. He leaned closer to the screen, studying the data. The object had emerged from slipspace exactly at the border between Vryn space and unclaimed territory. It was sitting there, not moving, just existing. The mass readings were incredible. The power output was even more disturbing. "Get me a visual," Hansol ordered. Daon adjusted the long-range optical sensors. The image that appeared on the main view screen made everyone in the control room stop and stare. The ship was enormous. It dwarfed anything the Vryn Empire had ever built. The hull was dark, almost black, with strange angular surfaces that seemed to absorb light. Weapons bristled from every section of the vessel. The weapons were so large that they could see them clearly even from this distance. "What is that?" whispered Ensign Kangde from the communications station. Nobody answered. Nobody knew. Hansol straightened up and walked to his command chair. His hands were shaking slightly, but he kept his voice calm. "Send an immediate priority message to Imperial Fleet Command. Unknown vessel detected at border zone. Uploading all sensor data now." Daon continued scanning the massive ship. She tried to identify its design, to match it against the database of known vessels from all the species in this sector. Nothing matched. The computer found no similarities to any recorded ship design. This was something completely new. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy patterns from the vessel," Daon said. "The power generation is off the scale. It's producing more energy than our entire station." "How is that possible?" Hansol asked. "I don't know, sir." The minutes ticked by slowly. Everyone in the control room kept glancing at the view screen, at the dark shape sitting at their border. It had not moved since arriving. It had not sent any messages. It just waited there, silent and threatening. 2 hours later, Admiral Tae Yang's response came through. He was bringing the 7th Battle Group. All 47 ships were being deployed to Talon's Eye Station. Hansol felt a mixture of relief and fear when he heard the news. Relief because they would have protection. Fear because if Imperial Command was sending an entire battle group, they were taking this threat very seriously. Admiral Tae Yang arrived 18 hours after the initial detection. His flagship, the Eternal Glory, was the pride of the Vryn fleet. It was a massive battleship that had won 12 major engagements against younger species who had challenged the Empire. Behind it came 46 more warships, cruisers and destroyers and frigates, all taking up defensive positions around Talon's Eye Station. Daon watched the fleet arrange itself in a protective sphere formation. It was an impressive display of military power. The Vryn Empire had ruled this sector for 300 years, crushing anyone who opposed them. Surely this fleet could handle one ship no matter how large it was. Admiral Tae Yang transported over to the station to personally review the sensor data. He was an older man, heavily decorated, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Hansol met him in the control room and handed over all the information they had gathered. "Have you identified the vessel?" Tae Yang asked. "No, sir," Hansol replied. "It matches nothing in our database." Tae Yang studied the data in silence. He pulled up the visual feed and stared at the dark ship. After several minutes, he spoke again. "What do we know about this region of space? What species live beyond our border here?" Hansol brought up the star charts. "This area borders unclaimed space, sir. Beyond that, approximately 40 light-years away, is the region known as the human sphere. Humans, Taeyang said slowly. We know almost nothing about them. That was true. Humanity had maintained strict isolation for nearly 2 centuries. They refused diplomatic contact. They ignored trade offers. They simply stayed in their corner of the galaxy and never bothered anyone. The Vryn Empire's intelligence reports on humanity were thin. Most analysts considered them primitive isolationists, probably afraid of the greater powers in the galaxy. Could this be a human vessel? Hansel asked. It seems unlikely, Taeyang said, but I cannot rule it out. Dayun interrupted carefully. Admiral, if I may? I've been running deep scans on the vessel for the past 20 hours. The hull material is unknown. We cannot identify what it's made of. The power readings suggest technology far beyond our current capabilities. And, sir, there's something else. What is it, Lieutenant? Taeyang asked. The ship is maintaining perfect position. Exact coordinates not drifting even a single meter. But I detect no thruster activity. No reaction control systems firing. It's as if the ship is locked in space by some force we cannot detect. Taeyang's expression grew darker. Keep monitoring it. I want every sensor we have focused on that vessel. If it moves, if it powers weapons, if it does anything at all, I want to know immediately. Yes, sir, Daon replied. 3 days passed. The human Dreadnought, if that was what it was, did not move. It did not communicate. It simply remained at the border, watching them with sensors they could not fully detect. The crews of the 7th Battle Group grew nervous. Soldiers were trained for action, not for waiting. This silent standoff was worse than battle. Taijin barely slept during those 3 days. She stayed at her station, analyzing every piece of data she could gather. The more she learned about the mysterious ship, the more frightened she became. This vessel represented technology that should not exist. Whoever built it was far ahead of the Vryn Empire in ways that mattered for warfare. On the 4th day, Hansol found Daun asleep at her station. He gently shook her shoulder. Lieutenant, go get some rest. That's an order. Daun looked up at him with exhausted eyes. Sir, what if it attacks while I'm gone? Then we'll handle it, Hansol said, though his voice lacked confidence. You're no good to us if you collapse from exhaustion. Daun nodded and stood up slowly. As she walked toward the quarters section, she glanced one more time at the main view screen. The dark ship hung there in the void, patient and terrible. Something told her that this vessel was just the beginning. Something told her that the Vryn Empire's 300 years of easy dominance were about to end. She was right. News of the mysterious vessel reached Vryn Prime within hours of Admiral Taeyang's arrival at the border. The Imperial capital world was a gleaming jewel of a planet, home to 20 billion Vryn citizens and the seat of power for an empire that spanned 47 conquered worlds. The Grand Council chambers sat at the heart of the Imperial Palace, and it was there that the future of the empire would be decided. Empress Hyojin sat upon her throne, listening to the reports with growing irritation. She was a young empress by Vryn standards, only 50 years old. But she had ruled for 20 years with an iron fist. Under her leadership, the empire had crushed 3 rebellions and conquered 2 new species. She was not accustomed to feeling threatened. One ship, she said, her voice sharp. You convene an emergency session of the Grand Council because of one ship? War Master Jiwoo stepped forward. He was the head of the Imperial military, a veteran of countless battles, and he wore his scars like medals. Majesty, this is not an ordinary ship. The sensor readings suggest technology we do not possess. The vessel sits at our border uninvited, unannounced. This is a violation of Imperial space and an insult to your authority. Counselor Byung-ho, the head of the diplomatic corps, raised his hand to speak. He was an older man, cautious and thoughtful, the opposite of Jiwoo in every way. Majesty, if I may offer a different perspective. Speak, Hyojin commanded. Byung-ho activated a holographic display above the council table. Images of various species and their territories appeared, shifting and changing as he spoke. The vessel appeared at the border with unclaimed space, approximately 40 light-years from what we call the human sphere. We know very little about humanity, but what we do know should give us pause. They are isolationists, Jiwoo interrupted, cowards who hide in their corner of space. Perhaps, Byung-ho said carefully. Or perhaps they are simply patient. Consider this. In the past 2 centuries, 5 different species made contact with humanity. 3 of those species are now close allies of Earth. 2 of those species disappeared completely from all records. The council chamber grew quiet. Byung-ho continued, his voice steady. Humanity has fought only 3 wars in the last 200 years. 3 wars, gentlemen, and they have never lost, not once. Every conflict ended with total human victory, often within weeks. Against inferior species, Jiwoo scoffed. The Vrin Empire has conquered 47 worlds. We have crushed dozens of species. We are the dominant power in this sector. 300 years of unbroken victories speak for themselves. 300 years of victories against species weaker than us. Byung-ho countered. We have never faced an enemy with superior technology. We have never had to. Empress Hyojin leaned forward on her throne. What are you suggesting, counselor? That we fear this one ship? That we tremble before these mysterious humans? I am suggesting caution, Majesty. We do not know what we face. Perhaps it would be wise to attempt communication before we make any aggressive moves. Jiwoo slammed his fist on the council table. Communication? They sit at our border without permission. They ignore our attempts to hail them. This is an act of war and we should respond accordingly. With what? Byung-ho asked. Admiral Tae-yang has 47 ships at the border. That vessel has not responded to any of our messages, has not made any aggressive moves. For all we know, it is simply watching us, learning about us. If we attack and fail, we show weakness to the entire sector. And if we do nothing, we show fear, Jiwoo retorted. Every species we have conquered will see this. They will see the mighty Vrin Empire paralyzed by a single ship. Rebellions will ignite across our territory. We must act. The debate continued for hours. Empress Hyojin listened to both sides, weighing her options. Finally, she made her decision. We will send a warning fleet. 12 ships under the command of Captain Young-soo. They will approach the human vessel and escort it out of our territory. Not an attack, but a clear message. This is our space and they are not welcome here. Majesty, that may not be enough, Byung-ho warned. It will suffice, Hyojin said firmly. We are the Vrin Empire. We do not cower before shadows and unknowns. Captain Young-soo is one of our finest commanders. He will handle this situation appropriately. The council session ended. Jiwoo looked satisfied. Byung-ho looked worried. As the councilors filed out of the chamber, Byung-ho approached the Empress one final time. Majesty, please reconsider. Something about this feels wrong. Hyojin regarded him coldly. Your caution has served the Empire well in the past, Byung-ho. But there are times when strength must be shown. This is one of those times. My decision is final. Back at the border, Admiral Tae-yang received the orders from Imperial Command. He read them twice, then called his senior officers to his ready room. When they arrived, he could see the concern on their faces. They had all been watching the human Dreadnought for days now, and none of them liked what they saw. We have our orders, Tae-yang said. Captain Young-soo is bringing 12 ships from the 3rd Fleet. Together with our forces, we will have 59 warships facing this single vessel. Command believes this will be sufficient to escort it away. And if it refuses? Asked Captain Minho, commander of one of the battle group's heavy cruisers. Then we are authorized to use force to disable it, Tae-yang replied. But only to disable. Command wants to capture this ship if possible, to study its technology. The officers exchanged glances. Everyone in the room was thinking the same thing. How do you disable something you don't understand? How do you capture a ship that might be capable of destroying your entire fleet? What do we know about Captain Young-soo? Asked Commander Sungmin. Tae-yang sighed. He is young, ambitious, and has never lost a battle. He also has a reputation for aggressive tactics. Wonderful, Sungmin muttered. 3 days later, Captain Young-soo arrived with his 12 ships. He immediately transported to the Eternal Glory to meet with Admiral Tae-yang. Young-soo was exactly as his reputation suggested, a young officer with fire in his eyes and absolute confidence in his abilities. He looked at the sensor data on the human Dreadnought and smiled. Finally, a worthy challenge, Young-soo said. The Empire has grown soft fighting inferior species. This will remind everyone why the Vrin are the masters of this sector. This is not a glory hunt, Captain, Tae-yang said sternly. We are here to resolve this situation with minimal conflict. Of course, Admiral, Young-soo replied, though his smile did not fade. But surely you agree that we must show strength? We have 59 ships. They have one. The mathematics alone suggest victory. Tae-yang wanted to argue, to explain that mathematics did not account for unknown technology, for ships that could generate power equal to a small star, for weapons that defied understanding. But he was a military officer, and Young-Soo was following the spirit of their orders. Show strength, do not show fear. We move in 12 hours, Taeyang said. Formation Delta 7. We will approach as a unified force and deliver our message. If they do not respond, we will activate our targeting systems as a warning. Only a warning, Captain. Do you understand? Perfectly, Admiral. But as Young-Soo left the ready room, Taeyang felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. He had fought in 32 battles during his career. He had faced desperate enemies and overwhelming odds. He had always trusted his instincts, and right now his instincts were screaming at him that this was a mistake. He looked at the sensor display showing the human Dreadnought. It had not moved in 7 days. It had not communicated. It simply watched and waited. Taeyang wondered what it was waiting for. He had a terrible feeling he was about to find out. The 59 ships of the combined Vrin fleet moved into formation. Admiral Taeyang positioned his vessels in a 3-layer defensive sphere, with the most powerful battleships forming the outer ring. Captain Young-Soo commanded the Vanguard Squadron, 12 ships at the leading edge of the formation. They began their approach toward the human Dreadnought slowly, deliberately, showing discipline and strength. Lieutenant Da-Eun watched from her sensor station on Talon's Eye. The station remained at a safe distance, monitoring everything. Her screen showed the fleet's advance and the Dreadnought's complete stillness. 8 days had passed since the massive ship first appeared, and it had not moved even a single meter from its original position. Fleet is at 500,000 kilometers from the target, reported Ensign Kang Dae. No response from the human vessel. Commander Hansol stood behind Da-Eun, arms crossed, watching the same displays. They know we're here. They must know. They've known since we first detected them, Da-Eun said quietly. They chose this position. They're waiting for us to make the first move. On the bridge of the Eternal Glory, Admiral Taeyang opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. All ships maintain current speed and formation. We will stop at 100,000 kilometers and broadcast our message. Remember, this is a show of force, not an act of war. Steady and professional. Captain Young-Soo listened to the Admiral's words but felt frustrated. 8 days of waiting had tested his patience. He was a warrior, trained for action, and this cautious approach felt like weakness. He studied the Dreadnought on his own displays. It was massive, yes, but it was still just one ship. His squadron alone had 12 vessels with enough firepower to crack a moon. Sub-Commander In-Soo, Young-Soo said to his second-in-command. What are your thoughts on this situation? In-Soo was an older officer, more experienced than his captain. He chose his words carefully. Sir, I believe we should follow Admiral Taeyang's orders precisely. This vessel represents unknown capabilities. Caution is appropriate. Caution, Young-Soo repeated, tasting the word like something bitter. The Empire was not built on caution. It was built on bold action. The fleet reached the 100,000-kilometer mark and came to a halt. Admiral Taeyang activated the communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies in multiple languages, including what little Vrin linguists knew of human language. Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Taeyang of the Vrin Imperial Navy. You have entered restricted Imperial space without authorization. We require that you withdraw immediately and contact our diplomatic corps to arrange proper channels for future communication. Please acknowledge this message. Silence. The Dreadnought did not respond. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The fleet waited, weapons powered but not active, engines humming with restrained energy. Captain Young-Soo's patience finally broke. This is insulting, he muttered. They ignore the Empire as if we are beneath their notice. He turned to In-Soo. Activate targeting sensors. Let them know we are not to be ignored. Sir, In-Soo said carefully. Admiral Taeyang did not authorize active targeting. I am not firing weapons, Young-Soo replied. I am simply making our capabilities clear. They want to ignore us? Fine. Let them ignore a target lock. Before In-Soo could argue further, Young-Soo gave the order to his squadron. 12 ships activated their targeting systems simultaneously, painting the human Dreadnought with active sensor beams. It was not an attack, but it was aggressive. It was the military equivalent of pointing a gun at someone's head. For 8 days, the Dreadnought had been perfectly still. That changed in an instant. Da-Eun's sensor board exploded with alerts. Movement! The Dreadnought is moving. The massive ship accelerated impossibly fast. It crossed half the distance to the Vrin fleet in seconds. a feat that should have been physically impossible for something that large. Then it stopped exactly 100,000 kilometers from the fleet's position, precise to the meter. The acceleration and deceleration should have torn the ship apart. Instead, it hung in space without even a tremor. "By the gods," Hansol whispered. Admiral Taeyang stared at his displays in shock. "All ships defensive positions. Do not fire unless fired upon." The Dreadnought finally spoke. The message came through on all frequencies in perfect Vrin language with no accent, no hesitation. But the voice was not organic. It was synthetic, emotionless, flat. "Withdrawal required. This border violation will not be repeated." The fleet hung in space, stunned. The voice was artificial intelligence. The ship was run by a machine. The Vrin Empire had outlawed artificial intelligence 200 years ago, after the machine wars nearly destroyed 3 colony worlds. Every Vrin officer knew the history, knew the danger of thinking machines. And here was proof that humanity had not only created AI, but had mastered it to the point of trusting it with their most powerful warship. "Respond," Taeyang ordered his communications officer. "This is Admiral Taeyang. We mean no hostility. However, you are in Imperial space. We require identification and purpose for your presence." "Withdrawal required," the AI repeated, identical to the first message. "This border violation will not be repeated." Captain Youngsu felt his face flush with anger. "It's giving us orders? A machine is giving orders to the Vrin Empire?" He turned to his weapons officer. "Fire a warning shot. Single plasma bolt pass in front of its bow. Show them we are serious." "Sir, the Admiral," Insu began. "The Admiral is being too cautious," Youngsu interrupted. "We need to establish dominance." "Fire the warning shot." The weapons officer hesitated, then followed orders. A single plasma bolt launched from Youngsu's flagship, a brilliant streak of blue-white energy designed to pass harmlessly in front of the Dreadnought. It was a warning, nothing more. A universal military gesture that said, "We are armed and we are willing to use force." The plasma bolt traveled at near light speed, crossing the distance in seconds. It never reached its intended position. 10,000 kilometers from the Dreadnought, the bolt simply vanished. Point defense systems that the Vrin sensors could barely track intercepted and destroyed it so quickly that it appeared to just cease existing. The Dreadnought's weapons had moved and fired faster than the Vrin computers could process. Then the Dreadnought fired back. "Incoming weapon fire!" Daeun screamed from Talon's eye. "Target is..." "It's not firing at the fleet. Target is asteroid J447. Every sensor in the Vrin fleet turned to watch. Asteroid J447 was 500,000 kilometers away. A small rocky body about 300 meters in diameter. The Dreadnought's weapon hit it dead center. There was no explosion. No debris field. The asteroid simply vanished, converted instantly to plasma and radiation by a weapon the Vrin had no name for. The AI's voice came again, still emotionless, still flat. "Final warning. Withdrawal required." Admiral Taeyang found his voice, though it shook slightly. "Captain Youngsu, stand down immediately. Do not take any further action. That is a direct order." On Youngsu's bridge, Insu looked at his captain with a mixture of fear and anger. "Sir, we need to withdraw. Now." Youngsu stared at the empty space where the asteroid had been. His mouth was dry. His hands trembled. He had just made a catastrophic mistake and he knew it. "Acknowledged, Admiral." Standing down. Taeyang sent an emergency message to Imperial Command, his words rapid and urgent. "Command, this is Admiral Taeyang. The human vessel has demonstrated weapons capability far beyond our projections. Recommend immediate strategic reassessment. Weapon signature analysis impossible. Target elimination was instant and total. Requesting new orders." The fleet held position, not advancing, not retreating, just existing in the terrible space between peace and war. The Dreadnought waited, patient as always. No one spoke. No one moved. They all understood that they had just glimpsed something beyond their comprehension. On Talon's eye, Daeun pulled up the sensor recordings of the weapon strike. She played it again and again, trying to understand what she had seen. The energy signatures made no sense. The physics were impossible. Whatever the humans had built, it operated on principles that Vrin science did not recognize. Commander Hansol sat down heavily in his chair. "How do you fight something like that?" "You don't," Daeun replied quietly. "You either run or you die." The message from Imperial Command took 3 hours to arrive. When it came, Admiral Taeyang read it twice, hoping he had misunderstood. He had not. The Empire was mobilizing. 300 ships were being assembled from fleets across Imperial space. The largest military force the Vryn had deployed in 80 years, and they were all coming here to face one human dreadnought. Taeyang closed his eyes and said a prayer to gods he had stopped believing in decades ago. Across the Vryn Empire, military shipyards erupted into activity. Ships in dock for maintenance were rushed back into service. Crews on leave were recalled immediately. Weapons stockpiles were loaded onto transport vessels. The machine of war that had not moved at full speed in 80 years groaned back to life, and the sound echoed across 47 conquered worlds. On Vryn Prime, Empress Hyojin convened an emergency military council. Fleet Marshal Kyungmi stood at the head of the table, a holographic display showing ship positions across the Empire. She was the supreme commander of all Vryn military forces, a woman who had spent 50 years building and maintaining the Empire's war machine. 300 ships, Kyungmi said, her voice carrying the weight of command. That is what we can assemble within 10 days without completely stripping our defensive positions. It will be the largest fleet deployment since the Kalter Rebellion. Is it enough? Empress Hyojin asked. It should be more than sufficient, War Master Ji-woo replied. 300 ships against one. Even with their apparent technological advantage, they cannot stand against such overwhelming force. Chief Scientist Dong Hyun cleared his throat. He was the head of Imperial Research, a thin man with nervous hands and worried eyes. Majesty, if I may, I have analyzed the sensor data from the asteroid destruction. My findings are concerning. Speak, Hyojin commanded. Dong Hyun activated his own display, showing complex mathematical formulas and energy readings that made most of the military officers' eyes glaze over. The weapon that destroyed the asteroid operated on principles we do not understand. The energy output alone exceeded anything in our arsenal by a factor of 50. More disturbing is the precision. The asteroid was converted to plasma uniformly, which suggests matter-energy conversion at the molecular level. What does that mean in terms we can understand? Kyungmi asked. It means they can turn anything they shoot into pure energy. Dong Hyun said bluntly. Ships, stations, planets. The power generation required for such a weapon is impossible by our current physics. This vessel generates more power than our entire planetary grid on Vryn Prime. And that is just for one weapon. They have dozens visible on the hull. The room fell silent. Finally, Counselor Byung-ho spoke. Then perhaps we should reconsider this military approach. Perhaps communication? No, Ji-woo interrupted. We cannot show weakness now. The entire sector is watching. If we back down from one ship, every species we have conquered will see it as an opportunity to rebel. We must attack and we must win. Even if we lose ships? Byung-ho asked. We will not lose, Ji-woo said firmly. 300 ships, Counselor. 300. No single vessel can stand against that. Empress Hyojin made her decision. Fleet Marshal Kyung-mi, proceed with the mobilization. Assemble your 300 ships and eliminate this threat. Show the galaxy that the Vryn Empire bows to no one. At the border, Admiral Taeyang faced his own crisis. His fleet of 59 ships maintained their position, neither advancing nor retreating, caught in a stalemate with the human Dreadnought. But something had changed. The Dreadnought was no longer passive, it was scanning them. Lieutenant Da-yoon tracked the sensor sweeps from Talon's eye station. Commander, the Dreadnought is conducting active scans of every ship in the fleet. High-resolution deep penetration scans. They're analyzing our ships down to the individual component level. Commander Han Sol watched the data streams flowing across his displays. They're learning about us, cataloging our capabilities, our weapons, our weaknesses. Should we jam the scans? Asked Ensign Kang Dae. No, Han Sol said after a moment. If they wanted to attack, they would have done it already. Let them look. Maybe they'll see that we're not worth fighting. On the Eternal Glory, Admiral Taeyang received a message that made his blood run cold. It came on a private encrypted channel, directed specifically to his ship and only his ship. The encryption was Vryn military grade, which should have been impossible for an outsider to possess. But there it was, a message waiting for his eyes only. Taeyang opened it in his private ready room. What appeared on his screen was a human face, a man young with dark hair and Asian features. He wore a simple uniform with no insignia Taeyang recognized. When he spoke, it was in perfect Vryn language with no accent at all. Admiral Taeyang, my name is Commander Wu Jin. I am the diplomatic liaison assigned to the vessel you have been monitoring. First, I apologize for the delay in communication. We needed time to learn your language properly. Second, I want to explain why we are here. The recording continued. Humanity is aware of the Vryn Empire. We know about your 300 years of expansion. We know about the 47 species you have conquered. And we know that your expansion has been moving toward systems under our protection. Tae Yang sat forward. Protection? The humans were protecting other species? 3 of the species you classified as primitive and suitable for conquest sent representatives to Earth 20 years ago. They asked for help. They asked us to prevent the Vryn Empire from reaching their worlds. We agreed. What you see at your border is not an invasion force. It is a boundary marker. This is where your empire ends. The human's expression remained neutral, but his words carried weight. I understand that your government has decided to send 300 ships to this location. This is unfortunate. We do not want to fight you. We do not want to kill your people. But if you attack, we will defend this boundary. And, Admiral, I must be honest with you. 300 ships will not be enough. The recording paused and Wu Jin's expression softened slightly. Humanity learned warfare the hard way, Admiral. We fought ourselves for thousands of years before we reached the stars. We know war in ways that species who only fought weaker opponents cannot understand. Please convince your government to accept this boundary. Do not test us, the message ended. Tae Yang sat in silence, staring at the blank screen. Then he immediately forwarded the message to Imperial Command with his own recommendation attached. One word: negotiate. The response came back within hours. It was not what Tae Yang hoped for. Empress Hyojin had watched the message. War Master Jiwoo had watched it. Fleet Marshal Kyungmi had watched it. Their response was unanimous. The fleet would attack. The Empire would not back down. Tae Yang read the orders and felt something break inside him. He had served the Empire for 40 years. He had never questioned an order. But this was suicide. He knew it in his bones. The humans were not bluffing. That Dreadnought represented a level of technology and military capability that the Vryn could not match. But orders were orders. He called his senior officers together and told them what was coming. 300 ships would arrive in 7 days. They would combine with the 59 already present, creating a force of 359 vessels, the largest fleet in Vryn history, and they would all attack one human ship. Captain Minho, who had served with Tae Yang for 20 years, spoke quietly. Sir, do you think we can win? Tae Yang looked at the faces around him, young officers and old veterans all looking to him for reassurance. He wanted to lie to them. He wanted to say, yes, of course we'll win, the Empire always wins, but he could not force the words out. I think we're about to learn something about humanity that we should have learned before we made this decision. Tae Yang said finally. Prepare your ships. Make sure your crews are ready, and make peace with whatever gods you believe in. Captain Young-soo, who had triggered this entire crisis with his warning shot, stood at the back of the group. He had been quiet since the Dreadnought destroyed the asteroid. Now he spoke, his earlier confidence completely gone. Admiral, I take full responsibility for escalating this situation. If there is punishment to be given, it should fall on me. We're all going to be punished soon enough, Tae Yang replied. Dismissed. As the officers filed out, Tae Yang looked at the tactical display showing the Dreadnought's position. It had not moved since its demonstration. 12 days now sitting at the border, patient as stone. He pulled up the message from Commander Wu Jin again and studied the human's face. You tried to warn us, Tae Yang said to the frozen image. I hope you remember that some of us listened. 7 days later, Fleet Marshal Kyungmi's armada arrived in a brilliant flash of light as 300 ships dropped out of slip space simultaneously. They arranged themselves into a massive battle formation, layer upon layer of warships stretching across 1,000,000 cubic kilometers of space. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was the might of the Vryn Empire made visible. The human Dreadnought, still at the border, still unmoved, looked small by comparison. One dark ship against hundreds, one AI against thousands of crew, one unknown against the certainty of imperial power. Fleet Marshal Kyungmi broadcast to all ships. This is Kyungmi. Today we show the galaxy that the Vryn Empire will not be intimidated. Today we prove that our 300 years of dominance are not ending. Prepare for battle. From Talon's Eye Station, Lieutenant Daun watched 359 ships prepare to attack one. She pulled up every sensor she had, making sure she recorded everything. Someone needed to remember what happened here. Someone needed to record the day the Empire's pride destroyed it. 359 warships hung in the void, their weapons charged and ready. It was the most powerful military force the Vryn Empire had assembled in a century. Fleet Marshal Kyung-mi stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Invincible Dawn, and felt the weight of history on her shoulders. This battle would be remembered for generations. This was the moment the Empire proved it could not be challenged. On a small courier ship positioned at the edge of the fleet, Observer Mi-sun checked her recording equipment one more time. She was a journalist from the Keltar species, a neutral observer allowed to embed with the Vryn fleet to document the battle. The Empire wanted witnesses. They wanted the galaxy to see their power. Mi-sun had covered wars before, but nothing on this scale. She made sure every camera was functioning perfectly. Aboard Admiral Tae Yang's flagship, young Lieutenant Jae-hoon sat at his station and tried to keep his hands from shaking. He was 24 years old, fresh from the academy, and this was his first real battle. He had joined the Vryn Imperial Navy because he believed in the Empire, believed in bringing order to the chaos of the galaxy. Now looking at the sensor readings from the human Dreadnought, he wondered if the Empire had finally found something it could not bring to order. Fleet Marshal Kyung-mi opened a channel to all ships. Her voice was calm, confident, the voice of a commander who had won every battle she had ever fought. All vessels, hear me. The human ship has refused our demands to leave Imperial space. It has demonstrated weapons capability but has not attacked. Our objective is to disable this vessel if possible, destroy it if necessary. We will proceed in 3 waves. Wave 1 will consist of 20 ships. They will engage and assess the enemy's defensive capabilities. She paused, looking at the tactical display. Remember, we are the Vryn Empire. We have conquered 47 worlds. We have crushed every enemy who stood against us for 300 years. One ship, no matter how advanced, cannot stand against the combined might of this fleet. All ships advanced to attack positions. The fleet began to move, a carefully choreographed dance of military precision. 20 vanguard ships accelerated forward, spreading into an attack formation. 280 ships held back, ready to support or overwhelm as needed. The remaining 59, including Admiral Tae Yang's group, maintained defensive positions around key assets. The human Dreadnought remained motionless, waiting. The 20 vanguard ships reached their firing positions. Kyung-mi gave the order. All vanguard vessels fire at will. 20 ships opened fire simultaneously. Plasma torpedoes, fusion missiles, particle beam weapons, kinetic impactors, enough firepower to crack a planet's crust, all focused on one target. The barrage was beautiful in its terrible way. A light show of destruction racing across the void. Lieutenant Da-eun watched from Talon's Eye Station, her sensors tracking every weapon. She saw the barrage close on the Dreadnought, saw the moment of impact, and saw something that made her stomach drop. The Dreadnought's defensive systems activated. Point defense weapons shot out from dozens of ports across the hull, moving with impossible speed. Every projectile was intercepted. Every missile was destroyed before reaching the ship. Energy beams hit something invisible around the Dreadnought and simply dispersed, absorbed by shielding technology the Vryn had never seen. Not a single weapon reached the hull. Then the Dreadnought fired back. But it did not fire on the ships. Instead, impossibly precise beams lanced out and struck the main weapons on each of the 20 vessels. 17 seconds. That was all it took. In 17 seconds, 20 warships had their primary weapon systems surgically removed. The ships remained intact. Life support was fine. Engines still worked, but they were defenseless, neutered without a single casualty. Commander Wu Jin's voice broadcast to the entire fleet, the same calm, accented-less Vryn language they had heard before. Withdrawal required. You cannot win this. We do not want to kill you. On the Invincible Dawn, War Master Jiwoo, who had insisted on joining the fleet personally, slammed his fist on the tactical display. This is humiliation. All ships full assault. Alpha strike formation. I want every ship firing at once. Fleet Marshal Kyung-mi hesitated for only a moment. Then she gave the order. All ships Alpha strike. Target the Dreadnought, fire. 339 ships opened fire. 339 warships unleashed everything they had. The combined firepower could destroy a small moon. The energy discharge was visible from light years away. It was the Empire's ultimate show of force, the absolute proof of their military dominance. Observer Mi-sun captured it all, her cameras recording the greatest display of military power the sector had ever seen. Later, historians would watch her footage and understand that this was the moment. This was when the old order died, the Dreadnought's main weapons activated for the first time. Where the point defense systems had been surgical, the main weapons were something else entirely. Beams of energy that made the Vryn weapons look like candles next to a star. The human ship moved through the Vryn formation like it was dancing, moving between ships with impossible precision and speed. Its weapons fired continuously, never missing, never wasting a shot. 5 minutes. That was all it took. In 5 minutes, 359 Vryn warships were disabled. Not destroyed, not obliterated, disabled. Every weapon system was gone. Every engine was neutralized. Every sensor array was burnt out. But life support remained intact on every ship. Emergency power still functioned. Medical bays still worked. Not a single Vryn crew member was killed. The Dreadnought had fought 359 ships and had not taken a single hit. It had disabled the largest fleet in Vryn history without killing anyone. The message was clear. We could have destroyed you. We chose not to. The human ship stopped in the center of the disabled fleet, surrounded by helpless vessels. Commander Wu Jin's voice came again, broadcasting to every ship, every station, every communication relay that was still functioning. This is Commander Wu Jin of the Earth Defense Force. We came to establish a boundary. We came to protect species that asked for our help. We did not come to conquer you. We did not come to destroy you. But we will not allow the Vryn Empire to continue expanding without limits. He paused, letting his words sink in. You have ruled this sector for 300 years by being stronger than everyone you fought. But you have never fought someone stronger than you. Today you learned what that feels like. Today you learned that there are limits to your power. Aboard the Eternal Glory, Admiral Taeyang sat in his command chair and felt something he had not felt in 40 years of military service. Relief. He was alive. His crew was alive. The battle was over and they had lost, but they had survived. He opened a channel to his crew. All hands stand down. Begin damage assessment and emergency repairs. No one is to attempt any aggressive action. The battle is over. In his fighter, Lieutenant Jae-hoon floated in space, his ship dead but his life support still functioning. He looked out his viewport at the human Dreadnought, now visible clearly for the first time. It was magnificent. It was terrifying. It represented something his empire had never encountered, a superior force that chose mercy over massacre. Maybe, Jae-hoon thought, maybe the empire needed this. Maybe they needed to learn they were not the strongest. Maybe humility was a lesson worth learning. Observer Misun's recordings transmitted back to dozens of worlds in real time. The galaxy watched. The species the Vryn had conquered watched. The other empires in the sector watched. Everyone saw the same thing. The invincible Vryn Empire defeated in 5 minutes by a single ship. On Vryn Prime, Empress Hyojin watched the footage in her private chambers. She watched her fleet disabled. She watched her greatest military commanders humiliated. She watched 300 years of imperial pride shattered. And she made a decision. Counselor Byung-ho was summoned to the palace immediately. When he arrived, he found the Empress standing at her window, looking out at the capital city below. You were right, Hyojin said without turning. You warned me and I did not listen. How many times did you warn me, Counselor? It does not matter now, Majesty, Byung-ho replied carefully. It matters, Hyojin said. It matters because I need you to go to Earth. I need you to negotiate with these humans. Not as conquerors speaking to the conquered. Not as the superior to the inferior. But as one civilization to another. Can you do that? Byung-ho bowed. Yes, Majesty. I can. 3 days later, rescue ships from the Vryn Empire arrived at the border. They found 359 disabled warships and 1 human dreadnought still maintaining its position. The dreadnought allowed the rescue ships to pass without interference, allowed them to tow the disabled vessels to safety, allowed them to save every crew member. Commander Wu Jin sent one final message before the dreadnought prepared to depart. It was addressed to the Vryn Empire and broadcast across all channels. Humanity does not seek to rule you. We do not seek to conquer you. But we will protect those who cannot protect themselves. This boundary is final. Respect it and we can have peace. Cross it and you will face consequences. The choice is yours. The dreadnought turned slowly, its massive form rotating in space. Then it accelerated and vanished into slipspace, leaving